Night shifts strip places down to their bones. No crowds, no noise, just you, the building, and whatever else might still be there. These are real night shift experiences. Story 1. The Man by the Speaker. Technically, it wasn't a night shift, but it was already dark, and we were about half an hour from closing. I was working with one coworker at a nearly empty electronics store in a strip mall. Business had been dead all evening. We hadn't seen a customer in hours. To try and draw attention, management had installed a loudspeaker outside the store, playing music non-stop. It didn't help. At some point, we noticed a man standing outside, older, unsteady on his feet. He was positioned directly in front of the speaker, slowly moving to the music. Not really dancing, more like swaying, shuffling in place. We joked about it for a moment and went back to closing tasks. A few minutes later, the man came inside. We greeted him and asked if he needed help. He didn't respond. He walked toward the counter without looking at us, his eyes fixed somewhere off to the side, never quite settling. One of his arms was completely dark, coated in thick oil, like he dipped it into something industrial. He stopped at the counter and stood there in silence. For almost 30 seconds, no one spoke. His body moved slightly the entire time. Not shaking exactly, just a constant, restless motion, like his muscles couldn't fully relax. We could tell he was on something, or going through something worse. There were no cameras, no silent alarms. We stayed alert, ready for him to pull out the weapon at any moment. When finally, he spoke. "I'm an honest person," he said. "I came in here for one reason." He paused. Then, he began listing things no one should ever say out loud. His name, his military service, personal details, numbers that felt dangerous to hear. He claimed his wallet had been thrown into a fire, that some kids had done it. His voice didn't raise, but his words turned violent. He said he wanted them dead. After that, he stopped speaking. He stood there for another minute, staring past us, his shoulders moving as if he were throwing punches at someone only he could see. His arms never left his sides, but his body acted it out anyway. We didn't move. We didn't reach for a phone. Leaving one person alone with him felt worse than doing nothing. Eventually, he turned around and walked out without another word. The door closed behind him. My coworker and I just looked at each other. Neither of us knew what to say. We just locked up early that night. Story 2. The doorbell at 3 a.m. I don't work nights anymore, but for years I did overnight shifts in residential care facilities. One of the most unsettling was a small dementia unit where I was completely alone. 15 residents, sole charge, no security, no backup on site. At around 3 in the morning, I finished my routine checks. Everyone was in bed, calm, safe. That's when I heard the doorbell. The sound alone gave me goosebumps. This was a locked facility. No visitors were allowed overnight. There was absolutely no reason for anyone to be at the door. I went to the front window and looked outside. No one was there. I told myself I must have imagined it. A long night. Too much caffeine. 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang again. This time, I felt genuinely afraid. I checked the window again. Still, no one. But across the street, a car was parked that hadn't been there before. It felt out of place. I took a photo of it, just in case. I went back to my station, trying to calm down, and sat with one of the residents who was awake. She was quietly playing a card matching game, completely lost in it. Without looking up, she said, "What did the gentleman want here? He looked like he'd had a bad night. Maybe he needs a cup of tea." My stomach dropped. I brushed it off. Hallucinations were common. She wasn't oriented to time or place. Then the doorbell rang again. Less than 5 minutes later. My hands were shaking as I stood up. Another resident was wandering the hallway, calmly painting the walls with a clean paintbrush to stay occupied. As I passed him, he glanced at me and said quietly, "Don't answer the man at the door. He might hurt you." I nearly broke down. I was a single, young woman responsible for 15 vulnerable people. On my call, my on-call supervisor wasn't answering. It was a weekend. She never did. I went back to the window. The same car was still there. As I scanned the entrance, I saw a shadow cross the doorway. Then, a man stepped into view. He turned his head and looked directly at me through the window. We made eye contact. I screamed. The residents began shouting. Alarms went off. The man bolted into the darkness. The police arrived soon after. The facility was in chaos. Residents were distressed. 2 officers moved through the halls. I tried to hold everything together until morning. When the shift arrived, I explained what had happened. They told me there had been a break-in nearby. A woman down the road had been attacked in her bed by someone looking for drugs. That's when it really hit me. We kept medications on site. Strong ones too. I've never been able to shake the feeling that he was looking for our building and settled for the next best house instead. Story 3. The Strange Couple. I had only been working the night shift at this gas station for a few months when this happened. My hours were always the same. late evening into early morning. By that point in the night, I was usually running on autopilot, tired, bored, just counting the minutes until my manager came to relieve me. About an hour in my shift, about an hour before my shift ended, the doorbell rang. I was in the cooler, restocking drinks. When I walked out and greeted the customers, I noticed something strange immediately. A man and a woman. They just stood there, silent, staring at the door, like they were waiting for something. Then, almost in sync, their faces lit up, and they greeted me back, overly cheerful. It felt off, but I told myself people behave oddly at night. They wandered over to the slushy machine, making small talk. I didn't mind. It helped pass the time. That's when I really noticed them. They looked like they didn't belong together at all. The woman looked like she'd been living on the street. Her coat was torn and frayed. Her gloves were cut open. A shawl with holes hung loosely around her shoulders. Her hair was short, matted, brittle like straw. The man beside her looked like the opposite. Tall, well-built, clean, expensive shoes, a gold watch, a ring that caught the light when he moved. His hair was neat, his beard trimmed, an unsettling contrast. They brought two slushies to the counter. The woman shifted her weight nervously, smiling constantly. Too wide, too much. The man tried to pay. His credit card declined. Once, twice, again, 9 times. I looked down, waiting for him to try another card. That's when I saw his hands. They were covered in small cuts, glass embedded in the skin. Fresh blood smeared across his palms and trailing up his arms. The cuts were still bleeding. I felt sick. And then I felt him watching me. When I looked up, he was staring straight at me. Not angry, not confused. Predatory. The kind of look that makes your stomach drop because you feel like one wrong move could set something off. Then he laughed, like none of it mattered. He said he didn't have the money and turned to leave. The woman followed, complaining cheerfully about not getting her slushie. As they reached the door, she turned her head just enough for me to see it. Blood smeared beneath her eye. She looked directly at me, and she winked. They were gone seconds later. I locked the door behind them and panicked. I ran outside to catch their license plate, but their car was already gone, merging onto the highway. Back inside, I checked the store. Nothing was stolen, but there were blood droplets on the floor. on the counter and near the cooler. That made it worse. I couldn't stop thinking, had they hurt someone? Had they just come from something violent? Would they come back now that I had seen them? By that time, my manager arrived. I was shaking. He told me not to worry. Said he'd handle it. He never told me how. I still think about that night. About the way he looked at me. About her smile. I genuinely believed I was about to be killed. And that feeling never really left. I didn't stay at the job much longer. Working nights alone didn't feel worth it anymore. Story 4. Night shift at the port. This is still the most unsettling and unexplainable thing that has ever happened to me. At the time, I was working overnight as a security guard at a large industrial site. It was the kind of place that never truly slept. But at night, it felt abandoned. Most workers were gone by sunset. Only security and one safety official remained. There were usually 3 of us on shift. The area was massive, but overnight we all stayed near the main entrance, since nothing really happened after midnight. The older guards liked the joke that the site was haunted. They talked about accidents from years ago, people who had died while working there. I never took it seriously. I assumed it was just a way to mess with the new hires. For the first few weeks, nothing happened. Occasionally, I'd hear strange creaks or notice objects that hadn't been where I remembered leaving them, but nothing I couldn't explain away. Part of the site included an old gym building. It was there for workers who sometimes stayed on-site for extended projects. The place felt outdated. Weights, a sauna, and a racquetball court with thin plaster walls and thick glass doors. On patrol, another guard and I would sometimes stop there to pass the time. That night, instead of playing, we decided to do a full workout. It was around 2:30 in the morning. The building was completely silent. No air conditioning. No background noise. You could hear the electricity humming through the lights. About 15 minutes in, we heard a loud thump. We both froze, then shrugged it off. A few minutes later, another thump. We radioed our supervisor, thinking maybe he was nearby. He wasn't. He was still at the front gate. The sound was coming from the racquetball court. At first, we tried to explain it logically. Old building, pipes, temperature changes. Then the thumps started happening rapidly, one after another. We stopped exercising and slowly walked toward the court, flashlight in hand. As soon as I shined the light through the glass door, my stomach dropped. Inside the court, one of the balls was rolling slowly across the floor by itself. There was no one inside. That's when it hit us. Those thumps weren't random noises. They were balls slamming against the wall, like someone was playing inside. Neither of us said a word. We just ran. We sprinted back toward the front gate, panic fully set in, barely able to breathe. When our supervisor saw us, he knew immediately something was wrong. We told him what we'd seen. He didn't look surprised. Instead, he told us that guards quit often, that there had always been something wrong with the site. He even showed us security footage, shadows, moving through empty hallways, lights, switching on and off with no one nearby. I didn't last long at that job after that night. I've never experienced anything like it before or since. I don't know if it was a ghost, something else, or something I don't have a name for. All I know is that something was there, and it wasn't alone. Story 5. The theater after closing. I worked the overnight janitorial shift at a small movie theater for a few years. And honestly, for a long time, it felt like the best job I could have asked for. I worked alone, no customers, no managers hovering, no rush. Once the last movie ended and the building was locked, the place belonged to me. I'd put in my headphones, queue up an audiobook or a lecture for my studies, and just move through the theater at my own pace. I cleaned the halls, wiped the counters, checked equipment, did some basic maintenance. Simple, repetitive work that didn't require much thought. It was peaceful in a way most people never experience. Walking through long, empty hallways at night, lights dimmed, carpet muted underfoot. The big theaters felt almost sacred when they were empty. Row after row of seats, quiet and untouched. No chatter, no phones buzzing, just the low hum of the building settling. Sometimes I'd find random things people had dropped between the seats. Keys, hats, loose change. Once, even a pair of glasses. Small reminders that hours earlier the place had been full of life. Most nights, I genuinely enjoyed being there. Of course, everyone had stories. Employees would swap them casually during shift changes. Someone swore an emergency exit that they had personally locked was open the next morning. Another claimed they'd seen a child standing at the end of the hallway long after closing. Too small to be a customer, too still to make sense. I never saw anything myself. I didn't put much stock in it. Old buildings creak. People misremember things. Night shifts mess with your head. I figured the stories existed because people wanted something strange to happen. Until that night. When I arrived around 3 in the morning, something was off immediately. The bar next door was still open, louder than usual, and a group of drunk people lingered in the parking lot. As soon as I stepped out of my car, someone shouted something I pretended not to hear. I used the side entrance and went inside, but within minutes, fists started pounding against the emergency exit doors, hard enough to rattle metal. Someone yelled again, this time closer. I didn't wait to see where it would go. I locked myself in the office and called the police. They showed up quickly and chased everyone off. The lot cleared out. The noise faded. Eventually, the building settled back into silence. I remember sitting there for a moment afterward, the headphones on, telling myself the worst part was over. I went back to work. I cleaned the lobby, emptied bins, restocked supplies. With my headphones in, the world narrowed down again. Just me and whatever I was listening to. That's when I started noticing the feeling. Not a sound exactly, just a sense that something was off. With music playing, I couldn't hear much, but I could feel vibrations through the floor. The building was old, and the wood beneath the carpet shifted sometimes. Normally, I didn't think twice about it. At night, it felt different, like footsteps. I'd pause, pull one ear cup off, and listen. Nothing. I shrugged it off and kept working. While cleaning one of the larger theaters, I noticed the curtain beneath the screen move. Just slightly. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. The space under the screen was used for storage. Long, dark, and barely lit. I told myself, air must be moving. Still, the timing bothered me. I took my headphones off and called out, asking if someone was there. No answer. I stepped closer and nudged the curtain with the broom. That's when the opposite end of the curtain shifted. Not the same spot. The other side. The realization landed all at once. Whatever caused the movement wasn't random. It looked like weight shifting. Like someone adjusting their position behind the fabric. My heart started racing. I knew the layout of that room perfectly. If someone ran, I would see them. There was only one exit, and it was behind me. No side doors, no hidden corners. I backed away slowly, and then I ran. I locked myself in the office and pulled up the security cameras. Every hallway was empty. Every exit looked secured. No movement anywhere on the feeds. That should have made me feel better, but it didn't. After a few minutes, I saw it again on the monitor. The curtain moved. One end, then the other. Slowly, calmly. Nothing ever emerged. Eventually, I forced myself back into the theater. I pulled the curtain aside. There was nothing there. No signs of anyone. No disturbed dust. No explanation that satisfied me. I finished my shift. But the piece I loved about that job never felt the same again. I stopped wearing headphones after that. Some places are quiet because they are empty. Others are quiet because something is listening.